Hey, family, Pastor Mike here. So grateful for everybody who is joining on tonight. It is Tuesday night, which means it is time for Tuesday night transformation, TNT. Again, grateful for all of you. Don't forget to shout out where you are. I saw Wanda said upstate. I'm upstate New York tonight as well. So we in the same, vicinity. I won't tell you my location though. I won't put that out there. But but again, let me know where you're joining from. Harlem in the house, Maryland. What's good? The boogie down. Sharon, what's good? Always grateful to see all of you and have all of you joining here. Victor, Deacon Vic, what's up? Jersey City in the house. Again, grateful for all of you who are taking the time at Atlantic City. ATL, that's what I'm talking about. The A. Good. Lauren in Harlem. I love it. Theron, what's going on, bro? The boogie down again. Listen, Claremont, brother Joubert. I love it. What's up? Claremont, California. Brother Dorian, you want to tell everybody you in St. Lucia, huh? That's what we're doing tonight, Brother D. You want to let everybody know that you in St. Lucia. You're a real piece of work. Be more. Springfield, New Jersey. What's good? I'm so grateful. I just gotta go back to Brother Dorian letting us know he in St. Lucia. You are something else, man. Something else. Trying to create envy and jealousy. Harlem, as always. So grateful for all of you who, again, who are here. As you know, tonight, TNT is usually a kind of deeper dive of our Sunday sermon. And so, hopefully most of you know that we are in the middle of a sermon series entitled The Secret to Celebrating You. Now, excuse that chirping in the background. I'm at a place where the fire alarm battery needs to be replaced, apparently, and it's going to keep chirping. So I'm sorry about that, but you'll be all right. But we're in the middle of a series, The Secret of Celebrating You. And the first 2 weeks of the series, this past Sunday, the Sunday before, we've talked specifically about the things that prevent us from celebrating ourselves. And on Sunday before, we talked about the title of the sermon was Believe Your Fruit. And this past Sunday, the title of the sermon was These Things Will Not Define Me. These things will not define me. And we spoke specifically the things that will not define us are guilt and shame. Guilt and shame. And so I began the sermon. Oh, good. I'm glad you enjoyed the imposter syndrome. I began the sermon with some definitions. A quote from Brene Brown about shame. She writes that shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Let me read that again. Shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Guilt is the actions. In other words, I'll tell you the difference. We feel, it was Lewis Smedes who said, we feel guilty for what we do. We feel shame for who we are, for what we are. We feel guilty for what we do. We feel shame for what we are. Guilt is connected to actions. Shame is connected to internalized feelings of identity. So again, guilt is connected to actions that we commit. Shame is connected to identity. So in Brene Brown's words, when you feel ashamed, you feel that you're unworthy, not good enough, not worthy of love or belonging. It's these internalized feelings that are connected to how you see yourself, your identity, where guilt is really connected to the things you do. Someone once wrote, the difference between shame and guilt is the difference between I am bad, shame, I did something bad, guilt. That's from Brene Brown again. I am bad is shame. I did something bad is guilt. So we harbor guilt about, again, our actions, and then that we will say that's bad. And then shame is when we actually believe that we are not just actions, but we are the thing. We are bad. Not that I did a bad thing, but I am a bad person. So that's how shame and guilt works. And they both are extremely destructive in ways that are stifling and crippling. I said on Sunday that so many of us are stunted by shame and buried, or rather stunted by guilt and buried by shame. And the two scriptures I used were not scriptures per se to give definition to guilt and shame, but they were scriptures to remind us that we have the capacity to overcome guilt and shame. Proverbs 24:6, the righteous person falls 7 times and gets back up. And then Psalm 139:14, we have been fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God. And so these two scriptures serve as a reminder to beat back intense and deep feelings connected to guilt and shame. We are not the things we do. We are not the things that we do. Because here's the truth. We are all flawed in some way. We have all made mistakes in some way. We have all done things we're not proud of. But those things do not define us. Guilt does not define us. Shame does not define us. Someone said, shame. And so what I have to remind people of is, and I did Sunday, that guilt and shame, stunted by guilt, remember, buried by shame, are things that prevent us from actually celebrating who we are. If we're constantly riddled by guilt, again, constantly reminding ourselves of the things that we have done that we're not proud of, or we are riddled with shame, where we actually think we don't just do bad things, but that we are bad, a bad person, that we are bad, and something is wrong. Those things prevent us. Why? How do you celebrate yourself if you're constantly reminding yourself of the things you've done that you don't like? How do you celebrate? And that's guilt. How do you celebrate yourself if you think you're an inherently problematic or bad person? Those things stop us from celebrating ourselves, right? They prevent us from actually living and engaging ourselves in ways that promote our own mental, spiritual, and emotional well-being, right? And that to me is important, and we don't often talk about that. Many of you know I was in LA this past weekend with people who are part of this FCBC LA congregation, and there was someone visiting with us for the first time on Sunday when we all watched this sermon together. And she said to me, she said, you know, I want to thank you. She was invited by one of our pastors. She said, I want to thank you. She said, I've been in a lot of churches, but I don't recall hearing a pastor preach about shame and guilt. And I said to her, I said, I agree. I haven't heard many as well over the years, especially before I was pastoring. But at the end of the day, I said, for me, preaching is about speaking to the issues that plague us, the real life and really live through issues that plague us. And I know it sounds strange, but we don't often hear sermons that speak directly to these kinds of issues. We would think that, well, come to church and you're blessed, you're blessed, you're blessed, you're favored by God. God is going to continue to pour blessings, and all that is good. But if you keep saying, I'm blessed, I'm blessed, I'm blessed, I'm favored, I'm favored, I'm favored, and I said this Sunday and I taught back in LA, and you keep saying that, then the reality, but not dealing with how you feel about you at the core, or dealing with the issues that are plaguing you, right? In many ways, then it's like trying to spray cologne over something that smells. You're not dealing with where the smell is coming from. You're trying to cover it up. And so often in church, we simply engage church as a form to cover up the things that may be deeply damaging or deeply harming. We don't always get to the origin of our feelings. But if I continually tell you again, that you are favored, you're blessed, you're favored, you're blessed, you believe in God, you're blessed and favored, and these feelings still linger, are still present, telling you how favored you are or telling you how blessed you are doesn't cure the feelings you wrestle through. All right. And that becomes extremely critical, right? So and someone asks, how do we get past our guilt and shame? I'll get to that in a minute. Or if you're impatient, go to YouTube and you watch the sermon from this past Sunday. I kind of talk about that. But yeah. And so to me, again, dealing with the issues that plague us, because there are many of us who wrestle with shame and guilt, who continually hold on to the things we've done. Forget about other people beating us up. We beat ourselves up. Because again, we are all flawed. We've all made mistakes. We've all done things we're not proud of. But we keep beating ourselves up, battering ourselves to death, and not looking for ways to heal our own minds. Or because of the things we may have done, we begin to think that we become inherently problematic or bad people. That's shame. So we harbor with the guilt for the things we have done, or we then think that we are inherently bad, and that's why we've done these things. So that shame and guilt work hand in hand in so many ways to wreak havoc on our psyche, and forget about people reminding us we do that ourselves. We do a great job of that ourselves. As always, I want to remind folks that if you have any questions connected to tonight's TNT, feel free to drop those in the chat and I'll try to answer them. But someone said, how do you get past it? Well, when I hear people say, well, how do I get past these issues, whether it's shame or guilt or hurt or damage, or whatever, I want to remind us to unravel or to really break the hold that shame and guilt may have over us is not a two-step thing. It's not an overnight thing. Those of us who live with deep shame and guilt have been carrying these things for years. So on some levels, I can preach a sermon, I can teach TNT. It doesn't mean that in those two moments, you'll get it. You're cured, you're healed, because it's a lot of work that must be done to get to the origin of your shame and the origin of your guilt. The thing is, guilt is connected to multiple actions. You can always feel guilty. You did something last week, you did something today, and you keep reminding yourself. And pretty soon, if you keep beating yourself over the head over all the things you do, you begin to think that you're synonymous with those things. That's why the title of the sermon was what it was. These things, shame and guilt, will not define me. You do not have to be defined by shame and guilt, right? So I would say for shame, you have to look at what is the origin of the shame. What is at the heart of why you feel that you are a bad person or problematic? Or what is at the heart? What narrative did you believe? What story told to you did you internalize, right? To think that you were now synonymous with those actions or synonymous with the feelings you think gave birth to those actions. So, Angela said, how do you celebrate yourself when you feel you're not worthy of celebration? Well, that's a great question, but I want you to stay focused here. If you don't feel you're worthy of celebration, you have to ask yourself, where does that come from? So it's not enough to say, how do I celebrate if I don't feel like I'm worthy of celebration, the key is to get back before you figure out how to celebrate. Because I can tell you how to celebrate yourself. I can just tell you to celebrate yourself. But me telling you to celebrate yourself means nothing if you don't go back to the reason why you are not celebrating yourself in the first place. So there's no strategy I can give you to celebrate yourself. There's no ways. And I can give you different things. Well, do this, do this, do this. But that won't be good if you don't get back to the heart of what you just said. If you don't feel you're worthy of celebration, that's shame. That's shame. That's Brene Brown. These deeply intense feelings that you are unworthy of love, or belonging. That's shame. All right. So that is the issue. You have to get to why are you ashamed of you? Why are you ashamed of being you? Why do you feel shame about yourself to the point where you don't feel you're worthy of celebrating yourself? That's the point of the series. And that's the point of the first 2 weeks. Some of us have to do with the imposter syndrome, and some of us are because of guilt and shame, right? I mean, there's a myriad of other reasons connected, but those are just two that have stuck out, all right? And that to me means something. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. That specific scripture is in Psalm 139. I can't recall if it is, and I don't believe it's anywhere else in that specific language. So Psalm 139 and 14. I don't know if it's anywhere specifically language like that. Yeah. So I think, Angela just said the perfect thing. We want to know how to celebrate ourselves, but at the same time, learning to celebrate ourselves is the second part. We have to first ask ourselves, what is it about us? What has happened to us? What things have we accepted about ourselves that make us feel unworthy of love or belonging or feeling valuable? And that's only a work that you can do. I said this, I think, on Sunday in the sermon. That's work that you can, that's only work that you can do. Nobody can do that work for you in so many ways. And so you have to be willing to trace down and track down the origin of the shame. The guilt is a little bit easier to discern because guilt is really connected to shame. If you feel you're not worthy and you think that you're a bad person or something is wrong with you, that means then the things you do that you believe are a reflection of those feelings of unworthiness, you'll continue to remind yourself to reinforce your feelings of unworthiness. So if I do something tomorrow that may be bad, and I already feel ashamed of being me, then it's easy to take that thing I do and keep reminding myself of what I did, or keep living in this echo chamber of all my flaws, faults, and mistakes, and beating myself down and continue reminding myself of how bad I am. And just when I get ready to celebrate, I then remind myself, no, you can't celebrate because, like, look what you did the other day, and look what you did, a year ago, and look what you did 5 years ago, and look what you did last week. Like you're nothing. And you begin to talk yourself. Remember, I said a few weeks ago, your greatest conversation partner is yourself. So that means what you say to yourself is paramount. I read something the other day. It said, talk to yourself the way you would talk to someone you love. Think about that. Talk to yourself the way you talk to someone you love. There are people in our lives that we love or we fall in love with, and we have those relationships. We wouldn't talk to them certain ways, but we would talk to ourselves a certain way, which makes talk about how we feel about ourselves, right? He said, causes me shy away from moving forward in my business leadership, was being attacked by my friend's parents as a child, blaming me for the bad things my friend did, and I wasn't even a part of it. Well, then you've won half the battle. You won half the battle because you know where it comes from. And now your problem is now learning to disconnect, as I said on Sunday, unhitch yourself from those things, those thoughts that reinforce the feelings of shame. You know exactly where it comes from. And the question is, how long will you believe that narrative? Because if that narrative is stopping you from moving forward right now, that means you have accepted it, internalized it, believe it, and it becomes the lens by which you see yourself or your possibilities. But if you know that is not you, you have to remind yourself that those narratives, one, do not define you. And two, they're not real. They're lies. That's not who you are. And the deep thing is that those narratives that damage us, as I said on Sunday, can come from people we love. In fact, people we love are the greatest at manipulating our emotions about things we've done, constantly reminding us about those things, constantly throwing those things in our face. And when strangers do it, it doesn't bother you. But when people you love and who care for you, who you believe should care for you, or you care for do it, it's something completely different. Totally different. All right? So when you've done things, I'm going to say this again for the guilt part. We have all done things. We have all made mistakes. We have all done things we're not proud of. But forgive yourself. This is what I said on Sunday. Forgive yourself. Show yourself what I talked about, I think, last Tuesday. Self-compassion. Forgive yourself. We don't need you participating in your own emotional demise. We don't need you engaging in the kind of work that diminishes your significance or your humanity. Forgive yourself. Deacon Vic said, most of my guilt and shame was directly connected to who I gave my ear to. When I realized disconnecting from those people wasn't me being negative, but me being positive for myself, the healing began. Yes, that unhitching yourself, disconnecting yourself from those spaces, places, and people who always want to reinforce the guilt and shame that you may have is unhealthy. Unhealthy. I love who this person is. I had to learn to give myself the same grace I give others. Absolutely. Show yourself grace. Be kind to yourself. And realize that once you've done something wrong, it does not define you. And here, go deeper. If you've done wrong to people, acknowledge it. Don't be in denial of it. And you seek to make amends. And then there are those who will not receive it. I know there may be people who I've done things to. I'm thinking about a particular person I did something to, and I apologized to that person, and they refused to receive it. And in fact, there was a period when they would often remind me of it. I had to learn to distance myself and disconnect myself. Once I did the thing I needed to do to make amends, it was no longer my burden to carry. And if the person did not accept what I did, my apology, I can't control that either. I've done what was necessary. When you do that, you alleviate yourself of the burden. Remember, your responsibility is to not determine the outcome of the individual, how they react to your apology or your amends. You have to do it. What they do or don't do with it is not your concern. You've done the right thing to cleanse yourself of that guilt so you move on and you look forward, right? Right? So no, how do you forgive yourself when you live life every day having to face the guilt of those actions? You made a choice. You're making a choice to live every day with that guilt. That's a choice you're making. You're getting up every day making a choice to make yourself feel like crap. I'm just saying. You're making a choice. Especially if you know the things that you've done don't define you, or the things people have said are not true, and you've grown. Maybe you did do things in the past. You've grown, you evolved from that place and that space. You're no longer obligated to carry that. So when you get up and you every day, you want to remind yourself of the things you did and beat yourself up, you're making a choice. You're making a choice to do that. You're making a choice to destroy yourself. You're making a choice to be your own saboteur. You're making a choice to give yourself grief. You're making a choice to cause yourself sorrow. You're making a choice to cause yourself suffering. You are making a choice, right? You're making a choice. And again, I'm going to say this. If you've been doing that, I see Wanda said, what about living with shame, trying to shake the feeling? Yeah, Again, the things that you may have done that contributed to your feelings of shame and guilt will not be eradicated overnight, but you have to make a different choice in your life. You have to choose that I will not let those actions define me, and I am not those things, or I am not what people have told me about myself. And you know you're not. They've worked it, manipulated in such a way. That's why Psalm 139 was important. You have been fearfully and wonderfully made. You have been made in the image of God. Lean into that, right? Lean into that knowledge. That becomes critical. Lean into that knowledge, right? And now begin the habit of believing and creating new narratives about your life and who you are. Create new narratives. But this is not easy work, but you have to make a choice to work at it. So you can't just wake up and say, I'm gonna celebrate myself. See, this is what happens sometimes. You go to church, hear a great word, we feel energized. Oh my gosh, the word was great. I'm gonna start working on myself. I'm gonna start celebrating me. And you do it for a while and it fizzles. Why? Because you can't get to the place of authentically celebrating who you are unless you confront the things that have given birth to the feelings of unworthiness in the first place. You have to confront the things that are keeping guilt in your system and the things that make you feel ashamed of who you are. Until you revisit those spaces and places where that came from emotionally, you'll never get to that point of celebrating yourself. Remember, the first 2 weeks of the series are looking at the things that prevent us from celebrating ourselves. So in order to get to celebrating yourself, you must confront those things that prevent you from celebrating yourself and raise those questions. Why does this thing have a stranglehold on me? Why do I see myself this way? Why do I accept the narrative? Why do I think that I am the things that I've done? Why do I keep making myself feel bad about things I may have done that I moved on from? You have to answer those questions. No one else can answer those questions for you. You have to answer those questions because answering those questions are critical to your well-being. And it participates in the work of moving forward. Is it okay to forgive? But is it okay to forgive but not forget? Absolutely. How do you forget? How do you forget? If something has happened to you that has traumatized you, right? Has traumatized you, you can't forget that. In your forgiving, you can diminish the sting of it, right? Over time, right? But you won't forget. I can forgive you for what you've done. Doesn't mean that the moment I forgive you, all of a sudden wipes my memory out. It's not going to happen. But the key is you don't let the memory of the thing, the trauma, have dominion in your spirit. And that's a day-by-day thing, right? You won't forget it, but it, over time, will no longer have power over your disposition. So yes, you can forgive, but you're not really going to forget the things that harms you. You won't forget. You just won't let them have as much power and shape who you are, but you won't forget. So thank you for that question. But this is critically important, I think, to confront these things because many of us feel shame and guilt about the things we've done or about who we are. And the only way we can begin to move forward is to what? First, forgive yourself. Then be willing to unhitch yourself from those spaces, places, and people that are negative reinforcers of the damage, right? Look forward and don't look back. Look forward, move forward. If you're if you're constantly reminding yourself the things you've done and beating yourself up, that means you're missing this present. You're not living in the moment. Regret is about the past. Guilt is about the past. And you're constantly reminding yourself about what you've done that brought about feelings of guilt. That means you're living in the past and you're not even living in the moment. Forget the future. You're living in the past shaped by the things you've done. You're living in the past shaped by guilt. So person said, what I'm getting out of this lesson is you have to do the work. Yes. Once you do the inner shadow work, then you'll be able to move forward, work on forgiving yourself, and don't let your past or how others think of you define you. I don't want to make it seem like you do this first, then that. You can be doing the shadow work, right? And forgiving yourself at the same time. It's seeing the things that gave birth to that, to your feelings of shame, and then forgiving yourself. It's not this and that. It all takes place at the same time, right? I would also submit that sometimes being able to forgive yourself makes doing the shadow work possible, because forgiving yourself begins the work of destroying guilt's hold over your life. What's that? Oh, good. Thanks for sharing that, Kathy. Love it. I forgive myself for trusting the person who sexually assaulted you, who sexually assaulted you. No, no. Now, let me pull that back for a second. The person who sexually assaulted you did that work. There's no fault of yours in there. If someone took advantage of your trust, that's not your fault. I need to say that. If someone took advantage of your trust, that is not your fault. Those of us who hurt, or who are the ones who victimize and damage, part of the manipulation is to make you feel that you bear some responsibility for their actions. I want you to hear that, right? We feel as though that we bear responsibility for their actions. What responsibility do you bear for someone who sexually assaults you? Oh, you trusted them too much, right? No. That's too much weight to carry. You've been assaulted, then you feel some culpability. So now how you feel about you may be even worse than how you feel about the assaulter. So no, you don't bear that. You don't bear that weight. You shake that one, because they have done something to you and it is not your fault. And thank you, Victor. Yes, many people who've been the victims of sexual assault often think it's their fault, but that is what the assaulter had to make you think. That's part of the manipulation, so that you don't, so you bear a weight. So you almost begin to feel as though you deserved the treatment. You deserved it because what? You're not a good person. That's the mind game. That's the manipulation, right? But you need to know that when you've been the victim of that kind of assault or abuse, or it's not your fault. And I know it's easy for me to say, and I know also what it is to suffer from certain levels of abuse, and it's not your fault. The person who did it is to blame. And you cannot live life, right, giving them a pass uh, because of what, because you feel you hold some responsibility, right? So I think that becomes extremely important to say tonight. I know people, I know I've seen people who've been abused and victimized. Um, and the psychological game that the abuser played, I mean, manipulated them with is terrifying. Uh, and but I gotta say it to those of you who've suffered abuse, and I'm sure whether you're in therapy or not, or here or not, you played no part in it. That is the person's fault, and you don't have to forgive yourself for trusting them. You trusted them, and they took advantage of it. All right, and 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 that's their fault. That's their issue, not yours. Don't forget that. All right, I'm glad you said that, because there are a lot of people, Deacon Vic said, a lot of people, victims, who walk around with that guilt like they did something wrong. But that's part of the manipulation of abuse. And so remember that, beloved. It's no, no. I mean, think about it. Shame comes from that as well. I think that's why you shared that. That's another space where shame comes, because if you've been the victim of abuse and the abuser makes you think that it's your fault, that you deserve this, that the abuse that happened to you was what you deserve because you're that kind of person. Imagine you now growing up with those feelings of inadequacy, those feelings of low self-esteem, self-doubt, insecurity. I mean, you name it, all that birth because of the trauma of abuse and the abuser making you think that it's your fault, that you made them do this. I mean, think about the level of shame connected to that, and how then you will spend your life trying to avoid the shame, sometimes through deception, to avoid the shame, because you cannot be the one who inflicts damage. I mean, it's deep, because it works one way. You're either perpetually the victim, where you continually see yourself as a victim, right? And that is destructive as well, right? But all that is the effects of the trauma of abuse, and they give birth to guilt and shame big time. But that is not your burden to bear, right? So one, forgive yourself for the things you may have done. Shame is about how you feel. Again, guilt is connected to the things you've done. Forgive yourself for the things you've done. When it comes to shame, unhitch, disconnect from the spaces, places, and people who reinforce those negative narratives that you've internalized and accepted, right? That make you see yourself a certain way. It's all manipulation. Then look forward, like live in the freedom of now without carrying the weight of yesterday. That's guilt, right? And then lastly, you begin to manifest a level of gratitude, not for the thing that causes shame, not for the abuser, but gratitude for you. For you. When was the last time you thanked God for you? We thank God for so many things. When was the last time in the midst of your prayer or your meditation or your reflection that you said, God, I want to just say thank you for me? Can you imagine? Like, have you ever said that? Have you just sat there and said, God, thank you for me? We thank God for everything. Thank you for this. Thank you for me. Thank you for me, and thank you for loving me, and thank you for keeping me, and thank you. But more than all the things you've done, thank you for me, right? And speak those words about you, right? Thank you, God, for me. I am worthy. I am beautiful. I am powerful. I am unshakable. I am adaptable. I am the embodiment of infinite possibility. I mean, you can go on and on. God, thank you for me. Again, I, like anybody else, has done things that I'm not proud of, hurt people, said things. I've done it. We all have. But you get to a point where you have to rebel against the desire to hold on to that guilt. Right? Yeah, Christina. Because many of us are carrying bags that were not made for us and carrying other people's baggage. And we go from place to place, emotion, piling on more bags. Right? And yes, those affirmations work, Peggy, they do work. You speak to yourself. But in order to celebrate yourself, you got to unpack why you don't. And once you begin to realize why you don't, you can then rebel against those things and call them what they are. They're not true. I've done bad things, but I'm not a bad person. I know we've heard it before, but it's real. You've made mistakes, but you are not a mistake. You've hurt people, but you are not hurt. When I mean hurt, I mean that's not your identity, right? That's important. Yes, somebody just said, well, I never thank God for me. I have thanked God for all he has done, but never that. Yes, yes. Thank you for me. Think about the investment God made to get you where you are. If God believes you're worthy of God's creativity and God's energy and God's image and God's breath, if God believes you're worthy to be here, you better let your feelings catch up with God, because God already believes you're worthy. Now I need you to see that as well. And once you begin to see how worthy you are, how loved you are, how much you belong to God's family, then you can begin to talk about how you celebrate yourself. That becomes important. More important than probably anything else you will do. You know, yes, I am the beloved of God. God's spirit rests on me, and in me God finds favor. Can you imagine? Just say that every morning. You don't even have to get deep. Say that every day. If you wake up every day and you say that I am the beloved of God, God's spirit rests on me, and in me God finds favor. You say that every day, then everything will start to turn around in your mind. Because in order to experience a change in yourself, it begins with how you talk to yourself. Then it is accompanied by the actions you display. But when you say that, I am the beloved of God. God's spirit rests on me. And in me, God finds favor. I am the beloved of God. God's spirit rests on me. And in me, God finds favor. That's real. Yes, and I am whole, complete, and lack nothing. Why? Because I'm the beloved of God, and God's spirit rests on me, and in me, God finds favor. I am the embodiment of infinite possibility. Why? Because I am the beloved of God. God's spirit rests on me, and in me, God finds favor. I am worthy of all the beauty and bliss and joy and peace and happiness that can come my way. And why? I am the beloved of God. God's spirit rests on me, and in me, God finds favor. Yeah. You've done wrong things, but you're not wrong. You've made mistakes, but you're not a mistake. You've done bad things, but you're not bad. And all those persons who've tried to make you feel bad, all those people who've tried to tell you are problematic, you are flawed, you are real. Know this, that what they say about you is really a reflection of how they feel about themselves. And by telling you how messed up you are, that's called projection. They're trying to project onto you the way they feel about themselves. And the next time they do that, tell them, I do not have any obligation to bear the weight of your insecurity. All right. See, Thais, every time Thais, somebody tells you what to do, you got a reason why you can't do it. You need to stop that. Every time I say something, you come another reason why you can't do it. Stop. You keep talking yourself out of everything that could be possible. See, when you refrain that I'm the beloved of God, God's spirit rests on me, and in me, God finds favor. The more you say it, all the time you say it, they will get to a point where your soul will begin to magnify your words. And the more you say it, the more you begin to live into it. But you can't keep repeating when it's like the man in the pool of Bethesda. Jesus asked him, do you want to be made whole? He can't answer it. He just keeps telling you how bad things are. Yeah, well, every time I try to get here, somebody beats me to the. Do you want to be made whole? Because that's the deeper question. Someone can watch me every Sunday, tune in on Tuesdays, listen on Monday, watch on Wednesdays, watch on Fridays, start on Sunday, and do it all over again. But no matter what you hear, no matter what is said, no matter what is read, right? Nothing will stick if you don't believe that your wholeness is possible. If you don't believe that your wellness is possible. And then you must then practice those habits. You can't be on here tonight and say, I'm the beloved of God. God's spirit rests on me. And you repeat it even now as I say it. I'm the beloved of God. God's spirit rests on me. And in me, God finds favor. And then tonight's session is over. You get off of your screen, phone, or laptop, and you say, boy, I'm so unworthy. You got to continue to repeat, continue to speak, continue to pour into yourself. And for every time you are tempted to repeat the why you can't or the negative narrative, follow it up with, I am the beloved of God. God's spirit rests on me. And in me, God finds favor. And when you do that enough times, you'll start to beat back the feelings of inadequacy and unworthiness. You got to keep doing it. If you've been beating yourself up for 15 years, you ain't going to fix it in one night, which means you got to keep at it. Can't stop. You got to keep reminding yourself how amazing you are. You can't just do it one time, every day. If you have continually reminded yourself of how messed up you are, to defeat that demon and those demons that have been birthed from feelings of inadequacy, You have to be just as vigilant in affirming yourself. So don't talk to me about what you can't do and it's hard and I know it is. I've been there. But you are the only one who can do this work, and you have to do it. Do you want to be made whole? I want you to be able to say yes. The man at the pool of Bethesda could not answer, but guess what? Jesus didn't need his answer. He said, rise, take up your bed and walk. But I do want you to say yes. I would love you to get to the point where you can say, yes, Juliet, I am a beautiful human being. I am blessed and I love it. I love it. But I want you to get to the point where you say, yes, I want to be made whole. Good. Now get to work and do the things necessary to bring wholeness to your mind. And it may just simply start with daily affirmations. And we have more than enough at FCBC. Every year, our themes are affirmations. I am resilient. During the pandemic, I did a whole series. I'm a bridge builder. I am a storm stiller. I mean, you're going, I'm a water walker. You go on and on. All those are affirmations designed to bring healing to your spirit. All right, beloved. I'm already proud of many of you all. I'm proud of all of you, actually, because this is not easy work to do. Not even easy sermons to preach, because I speak out of my own experience of living with that guilt and shame. Right. So that's the work you have to do. That's the work you have to do. Well, just to add this last comment, Tice, I don't know how being a strong person means you can't show pain. I think I'm the strongest person I know. And boy, have I cried. And boy, have I said, ouch. And boy, have I hurt. And boy, have I been vulnerable. And boy, have I been transparent. None of those things disqualify you from being strong. That means you believe the false narrative that somehow being strong meant not being those things. And that's just not true, period. All right? Yeah. Well, if you feel like showing pain made you weak, look at Jesus on the cross. So, listen, beloved, as always, it is amazing spending time. I'm always mindful of time. My pastor once said, you don't have to be eternal to be effective. And I try to max out at an hour here. But listen, I'm going to give you a sneak preview. First Sunday of the series was Believe Your Fruit, dealing with the imposter syndrome. This past Sunday was These Things Will Not Define Me, talking about guilt and shame. And this coming Sunday, we're going to be talking about journeying to your joy. Starting to make your way to your joy. All right, beloved? Listen, before we close out tonight, let's pray. God, we thank you. We honor you for this time together. We thank you for the time shared and time spent. We're so grateful, oh God, that you continue to remind us of who we are and how we are, oh God. We are your beloved children. Your spirit rests on us. And in us, oh God, you find favor. God, thank you for that. We will continue to believe and trust. We want to be made whole. Not only do we want to be made whole, oh God, we will do the work of wholeness. Thank you for the push tonight. We love you, God. We honor you. And it's in your name we pray. Amen. Listen, amen, beloved. Don't forget, tomorrow is Wednesday. That means at 7:15 a.m. is Midweek Motivational Prayer Line in the morning. And then at 1 p.m. on Instagram will be Midweek Motivation on IG Live with me. I will see you all tomorrow. All right. Get to spend some time with you all tomorrow. Listen, until next time, much love, peace, and many blessings. Good night, beloved.